Hey guys, we're coming at you live from Sakebomb Garage. This video is going to be a tutorial on how to assemble your Ohlins suspension. We get a lot of questions. People get confused as to how to put it together when they open their box for the first time. This right here is our custom Sakebomb Garage FPSpec suspension for an S2000. Your kit may be a little different, but the assembly instructions and how we go through the process here in this video will be generally the same. Some of the things that we'll be needing right now are a caliper gauge. You can use anything else you'd like, but this is basically what we're using right here, so we can adjust preload. And we have our own custom FPSpec wrenches. These are a lot better than the stock Ohlins wrenches you're going to get. We have multiple teeth that allow for high torque. This allows us to make sure we get a good grip on the lock rings when we are adjusting and locking things down for it to be done. Our wrenches also allow you to control and adjust every aspect of your suspension so that you can adjust everything you need. And if you're thirsty, we also threw in a bottle opener for you. So we're always thinking of you. Generally, that's all you're really going to need. I'll be using an impact drill to make sure everything is tightened down. Otherwise than that, you should be good to go. Alright guys, I thought I would just go ahead and jump in, but before I do that, I was just going to explain a few things that you're looking at so that way we're on the same page when we get started here. We have our forks up here. These are our lower mounting forks for FPSpec. This allows your S2000 to get a little lower in the rear. These are the front forks. Obviously right here we have your springs. These will be the rear, these will be the front. These are our top hats with Aurora bearings. These are the dampers. We got the damper adjusters on top. These will be the fronts. These will be the rears. I'm able to know the difference here because the fronts will have a black spacer, so that's just kind of like a little quick tip if you're wondering what's the front and what's the rear. This right here will be your upper spring perch. This obviously will go on top. These right here are your lower spring perches. We got locking nuts to hold the whole thing together. Lock rings, we'll be using one to go against the lower perch and one to go against the mounting fork here. We have bearing spacers. These will go in with your upper spring perches and the hats. I'll show you how that all goes together. Other than that, we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing I do is I want to pull off the adjusting knobs here. Now there is a set screw that goes in right here, so we want to basically make sure that we twist the adjuster all the way to the right, and what I like to do is unscrew them both at the same time. This allows you to take out the adjuster without pulling out the set screw, which is in there. So we go ahead and pull those out for each one. Okay, now that that's done, just so you know, these phones actually come in your Ohlins box, and so I'm just using those to kind of hold everything like this, but this is something you guys can do at home as well. Now the next step, which is a little time consuming, but you're good, it's a little time consuming, but it's worth just getting out of the way, is screwing on your lower perch. And you legitimately just start at the bottom, and you just go up till about halfway. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all four before we get started on the next step. Now that that's done, I will tell you that is kind of a pain and a little time consuming, but it is necessary. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and start on the rears. So we go ahead, we take our damper here, take our upper spring perch, and we slide that right on top. And we take this bearing spacer and we put that on top. Good way to notice is that this large surface is about the same size as your upper spring perch, so it goes ahead and distributes the weight across the top. Then you take your top hat and you slide that in on top, and it should fit right above this, and it slips right in. You take your second spacer and washer right here, and it fits, boom, right at the top. Perfect. Now take your locking nut and twist it on top. So basically this is a somewhat complete damper, obviously without the springs in, but the reasoning behind this is we want to tighten down the suspension all the way to spec. That way you can go ahead and measure your springs, whether you have helpers. This suspension has a set of helpers. They will be used in the front, but the rears do not have any. So we set everything, and then we measure everything, and we set the preload. And once that is set, we take everything apart, we add the spring, reassemble the entire damper, and you should have your complete rear suspension. So we'll go ahead and do that now. One tip while you're doing that is you do want to firmly hold the shaft of the damper here. You don't want that to spin freely when you screw these in. There's a little leeway of how much this can spin, but you don't want it to just spin freely. So it's easy enough to just hold it, and then you want to basically do this exact thing to all 4 dampers. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, now that that's complete, it's time to check preload. So what we have here for the rears are Swift's 10K spring for obviously both dampers. And one of the great things about buying an FP Sport or FP Spec kit here at Sakebomb Garage is we sit down and talk to you and have a cool consultation of what you actually want to do with your car, whether it's street or track, and then we print you out a suspension consultation setup which explains to you how much preload to get so that we can fine-tune your suspension so that when you actually receive your suspension, it's bolt in, ready to go right into your car. So as of right now, we can see that the recommended preload for the rear is 3 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and set that. Go ahead and take out 3 millimeters off the total height of your spring. And then you basically want to make sure that from the underneath of the upper spring perch is flush with the bottom. So once you're adjusting that, you just bring up your bottom perch to that correct size. Once you have that set, you just bring up the lower lock ring. That way you can ensure that that lower perch isn't going anywhere. And we do that for the next one here. Move this guy out of the way. Actually, this has to come down a little bit. We were really close. There we go. Now it's tight. Bring up the lower lock ring. Make sure it's nice and tight. Pop that out. This is where your adjusters come in. You want to make sure that these are firmly tight. These will get tight as you drive and as these are used, so you just want to make sure that these are nicely snug. Just give it a good press in there. This ensures that you don't mess anything up when you're moving your stuff around or assembling it and installing this in your car. Nice and firm. There we go. That is for the rears. Setting preload for the front is very similar, although the front will have a helper spring, so the preload is a bit higher at 19 millimeters. Same process applies, so let's just go ahead and get started with this. So we have a Swift 12K spring here with a helper spring, and in between both we have a little thrust washer. You want to place that in between the two. This essentially allows your suspension to move around and actually be able to move, as you can see, as it bends nice and smooth. So we go ahead and do the same process for adjusting preload for the rear. We move that exact process to the front. So essentially what I did is I measured the entire stack here. I found it easier to do it off the edge of the table. That way you can have a little hangover and get a better measurement for it. Then, like I said, you take out what's listed on your consultation sheet. And then at this point, you do the exact same thing with your spring purchase. And there you go, preload set. So, At this point, we go ahead and take everything apart and then put the springs on and bring it all back to where we are now, but with the springs in. When the springs go in, we will be adding dust boots or dust shields. This allows no dust and everything to get here in the damper. So we'll either speed up or we'll come back when we get to the reassembly process. Okay, now we're back to step one with your preload set. So you want to take your damper, you take a dust shield or dust boot, whatever you want to call it, and you bring it on down. You make sure that the bottom is firmly stuck here on the damper. This will allow it from moving around. Take your spring, drop it in right on top, and then now when you look at your upper spring perch, you can kind of see why the design makes sense. Goes right on top, sits right on top of the spring. Take the bearing spacer, you throw that on top. Take your top hat, which also has the top one here, and then you set this right on top as well. This fills that little gap on top. Now you take your lock nut and you bring this on here. Now the shaft spinning is still a priority, so you want to just squeeze from the inside here as best as possible and zip it down. Now this definitely gets annoying. The dust boot will just start to twist up. So you can use needle nose pliers and kind of like peel out all the little bends as you want. I kind of pop it off the bottom. And once it's popped off the bottom here, just do what you can to let it unspin itself, and then you still have to work out all the little dents. This is a pain, so don't worry. We deal with it every day. You just have to figure out how you want to deal with this. But like I said, I try to pull the bottom off the damper here so it can kind of spin freely. Just keep it on the top and then just work your way all around. You will have to work at it, and then once you're done, just make sure it's firmly placed on the bottom again. All right, now that we have your suspension fully assembled with the preload set, it's now time to just take your lower forks. These are for the rear. You want to hand zip these on, and at this point you want to judge your ride height. This might be something you want to do in the vehicle. Once you have that set, you bring the locking nut down and lock it into place. Same thing for the front. You want to take your fork, Alright, there you have it, your fully assembled Ohlins suspension. The last piece of the puzzle is taking your adjuster. Now what you want to do is firmly hold the gold knob with both fingers, set it on top, make sure you have it completely straight, and I just give them both a spin until it's tight. This is where our wrenches come in handy here. And then you just give the bottom nut here a good firm little pull, and now you're tight, and you go ahead and you repeat the process for the rest of your suspension. And there you go.
you're all done. I hope you like this how-to, how to build your Ohlins suspension. Look out for more how-to videos coming in the future. This is just one of many that we're starting to kick off here at Sakebomb Garage. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the comments below, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.